All right, everyone. Welcome to the Wiki Creator interview with the Mythoverse team. We've got the whole crew with us. That's Matt, Brett, and Dan here. Welcome, guys, to the chat with us. How are y'all doing today?
Here.
Doing great. It's a pleasure as always to be here. Thanks for having us.
So we're sitting down here to talk to you a little about your upcoming crowdfunding campaign for your Mythoverse shared universe. And so why don't you just before we get into talking about the comic, why don't you each tell us a little bit about who you are and your background a little bit.
Who wants to go first?
Go for it, Brett.
Okay, well, I'm Brett McGowan. I'm the writer-creator behind Changeling and Urban Fairy Tale. Well, and it's fun. I want to say that this isn't the first time I've tried making a comic, but it's the first time it's the closest I've come to successfully getting one off the ground.
So you've had experience in the past with it.
Yeah, I have, and I tried making comics before in the past, and none of them really managed to get off the ground. Like, they were all just failures to launch completely. This is the first, but this is like the first tangible success I've actually had so far.
Well, that's good to hear, definitely. And Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'm Dan Sacharow. I've been in the information technology field, specifically software engineering, for about 15 years now. And while that's my 9 to 5, my 5 to 9 has always been storytelling in some form or other. Back in 2005, I put out a webcomic that ran for, well, obviously 5 years. Put it down for a little bit, and recently picked that up again in 2016 with a new webcomic based on the software engineering profession. And in between those two comics, I wrote a novel called Adobe Kroger Knight Errant, which is now currently available on Amazon. And the comic project I'm working on for the Mythoverse is a prequel to that novel, Adobe Kroger, Dame Commander, and takes place about a year before that. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be working with Leandro and Eric, some very professional and highly talented and skilled professionals. And much like Brett, this is the first time I've actually come this close to putting together a fully realized published physical book.
Nice. That must feel good for the both of you, I imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Matt, what about you? What is? Can you tell us a little about your background?
I'm Matt Trinh. I'm currently a writer for a number of projects for Wicked, but I first started off with a comic back in 2009. I sold it at Mercy Comic Con 2012. So I've got a little bit of experience selling at conventions. And but basically, this is the first comic idea that I have that people are getting excited over.
Nice. That sounds like you guys all kind of the same similar backgrounds in the way that you kind of come to stories and really kind of fell in love with it. It sounds like.
Well, I've been reading comics since I was about 10 or 11 years old, to be honest. It started with my uncle sending me and my brother a box of Spider-Man comics like almost every other month. Then after a while, it just kind of stopped and sort of picked it up back in high school with stuff like Sandman and Watchmen, and also a little bit of anime and manga.
Gotta love the Sandman, right?
Yeah.
If you count the Peanuts comics, I've been reading comics since I was 4, and I actually devoured all these little collections of Peanuts comics that my grandmother had, and ever since then, I've been, I progressed on into Archie's and Richie Rich, and then when I got into the big boy comics, I think the first one I actually collected was Elf Quest by Wendy and Richard Pini. That was a creator-owned work that came out quarterly. I don't know if our listeners are familiar with it, but if not, the early arcs are absolutely fantastic. She's an amazing artist, and it's kind of a neat little unique take on the elven legends that you would often encounter in fantasy. From there, I kind of went on into like Roger Stern. He was my favorite writer in the Marvel Universe, and I've been reading on and off ever since.
Any Calvin and Hobbes in there?
Oh, absolutely. Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin and Hobbes is one of my biggest inspirations, along with Peanuts.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I used to read all those. Yeah.
I have been reading Calvin and Hobbes since the 6th grade. In fact, like I have collections I bought back in the 6th grade. I still have them to this day.
Yeah, that was such a fun comic because it was like it didn't talk down to you as a young reader at all. Yeah.
Oh no, it was just right for young readers, but there was plenty for adults to enjoy too, and the artwork was top of the line.
Yeah,
definitely. For the funny pages.
It was also very creative too. Like it was like all the different scenarios Calvin would imagine in his head.
Right. Yeah, it really did. The imagination aspect of it, like it really encouraged the reader to expand their imagination.
Mm-hmm. A lot of philosophy too, just like the Peanuts. I think that's why it's endured so long. Like I used to love Bloom County when I was younger, but looking back on it now, I don't get it. Like it's a series of like current year pop culture and political references that don't carry over to the current day. Whereas Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts, you can read them 50 years later and they're fine.
Damn it, Garfield.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So along that lines of comics and stuff, like for the people who might not be familiar with it, can you guys tell us what the Mythoverse is about, and then after that, each of your stories individually?
Who wants to take this one?
Well, Matt doesn't get to talk yet.
Matt, tell us about the Mythoverse. Go get her, Ray.
Oh boy. I think I quit. So the Mythoverse is basically a series of comic titles that were initially produced, went into development separately, such as Adobe Kroger was published years before any of us have met. But we all find common ground in what kind of world we've set our stories in, such as it was back when Brett first talked to me about the changing script they had, asking for advice. Then we started talking about the world that we have for our comics, and it just kind of clicked how similar we think when it came to world building with mythology. And then after that, I think it was when we started talking in Slack that Adobe Kroger was considered to be part of the Mythoverse. After Dan had sent us a link for the audiobook version of Adobe Kroger. And I just felt like Adobe Kroger could fit in extremely well. So now the Mythoverse is basically made up of 3 separate titles that will reference each other at a certain point. But right now we're building up the stories and the world in our first titles. So I think, what are we going to do with the first story arcs? We're going to introduce certain characters into each of our stories and concepts.
Oh, do we have confirmation there?
Yeah, I mean, like Matt said, the stories were all written independently of one another. Adobe Kroger, the first draft of it was done in 2013, and it was made available on Amazon around that time.
Interesting.
So this book has gone through many revisions, but it existed in full before Matt and Brett and I began talking about this. And Brett wrote Changeling completely independent of myself and Matt, and it just sort of happened organically. I think that's one of the reasons why I have such high hopes for this working because it was an organic collaboration, kind of like how the MCU did it, where they first said, here's Iron Man, and there might be a loose connection here, but we didn't plan it that way. And it just sort of all fell into place as they went along. And that's kind of how the Mythoverse came together.
Kind of like, could you say a happy accident almost?
Entirely a happy accident.
Yeah, that's pretty much the best way of putting it. It was a happy accident.
Nice. Sometimes that's the best collaborations start that way.
Yeah, and the best part is we didn't really need to revise too much at all.
That's really cool too. Coming from starting from 3 different places, but having to those work so well with each other.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how well these 3 properties fit, with only the minorest of tweaks for like the world they're set in. And I don't even really consider them tweaks. We just established a set of rules that we all agree to follow moving forward. But the stories themselves have been more or less how they were before we decided to join them up. And
when you did notice that there were similarities and things that you could do together, what was the initial drive for each of you that made you want to create a shared comic universe?
Just why not?
Really, just to see what you could do with it. Really, just to kind of see where it would go. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. And the properties together are very strong. That is not to say they don't work just as well individually, but together, there's just so much more rich backstory and world building that we can do. That's much more satisfying when you see it from all these different directions and all these different genres.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Yeah. And so each individual, at least at the start, so each of the individual stories are going to be pretty much standalone stories instead of having overarching elements. Then,
I can speak for Adobe Kroger that there are elements that will be set up that will have far-reaching ramifications for the universe as a whole. But it'll take a little bit of time to pay those off. But when you go back and say, "Hey, that's what this was," it's going to be pretty neat for people that are paying attention.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really cool. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about each of your main characters, since I know that's a big part of your comics is the characters themselves.
Brett, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. Okay, so Maeve McKenzie is the main character for Changeling and Urban Fairy Tale. And of the 3 leads, she's the youngest. She's at the start of the book, she's 14 years old and about to start high school. Well, and she's best way I can put it is she's a social outcast.
Like many are as their age.
Yeah, and she doesn't fit in. She doesn't really have any friends. She doesn't have any friends, and she's really not really. She doesn't do well being around people either. She's just not good at it.
That'll be interesting to see how she deals with that once if she ever runs across a certain a knight errant, you might say.
Yeah, their meeting will be interesting.
Yeah, to say the least, that's for sure.
Yeah. So she has a fateful encounter with a fae, specifically a puka named Gavin. If you don't know what that is, a puka is a fairy that is a shapeshifter.
Huh, interesting.
Mostly they turn into animals. And it could be anything. It could be a horse, a rabbit, a dog. In Gavin's case, it's a cat.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Sounds cute. And we know Maeve loves cats, so.
Yeah. So, yeah. But yeah, her meeting with him kind of reveals that she in fact has fae in her, that she's a changeling. She was actually a fairy baby that was swapped out for a human one. And she's descended from banshees, and the whole catalyst is her sort of learning about her heritage and meeting her fae mother, and it's just really the whole whole arc of the series is her figuring out where she wants to, where she belongs. Do I stay with humans? Do I go back to the Fae? It's just where should I go? And really, I think what's going to introduce a lot of conflict into this for her personally is that Maeve comes from a devoutly Christian household.
Interesting.
So she has an upbringing and a heritage that are kind of at odds with each other.
I love that, because what do you do if you're a devout Christian and all of a sudden you realize that, hey, there's a Fey world, and not only that, I'm one of them.
Kind of makes your beliefs challenge your beliefs a little bit. Yeah,
exactly.
Nice. So that's cool. So it's a bit of a coming of age story and finding one's place in the world.
Duh. Exactly. That is exactly what it is, to be honest. It's and a lot of it's kind of taken from my own experience growing up, because I didn't just grow up in a Christian household. My dad is a pastor.
I was going to ask you if you had some sort of connection with the story itself in that way.
I do. It's like there are elements of my life that are in the book, but it's not. But it's in no way meant to be autobiographical.
Interesting. More inspirational.
Yeah.
Unless you want people to think that you're a 13-year-old girl.
No, I
yeah, that's
no,
pretty sure he did not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also another element that's sort of that's also like pulled from my own life, that it has mostly to deal with. This isn't something I dealt with. It was more like this was something my brother dealt with. It was when my brother was 10 years old. He was diagnosed with Asperger's. And so this was kind of something I kind of thought to myself, wait a minute, changelings were kind of in the old days were sort of a way to sort of, at least how I kind of interpreted it, they were kind of used as a way to explain away things like mental disabilities, either mental or physical, or deformities, or maybe even explaining away that that the child might not be related to one of the parents or something. I'm not 100% sure, but that wouldn't surprise me if that's true.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and so I thought to myself, because the way I sort of said to depict changelings is that they're sort of half Fae and half human, and what I thought to myself is, because those are two things that probably are not supposed to mix together. Because you see this a lot in fiction, like I think stuff like, say, Inuyasha or Devil May Cry. Like, you got characters who are like half demon, but nothing seems to be wrong with them, other than that they get a lot of cool superpowers. It might be regarded as freakish, but really, is there anything that's wrong with them? I thought to myself, wouldn't it make sense that if these two things are not supposed to mix and they did, something would kind of go wrong? So what I kind of came up with is that Maeve either has something that could be mistaken for autism. It's not. I'm not trying to score. I'm not trying to score like a pressure points or something. It was just. It's because it was something that kind of. It was just something I thought was a good idea to play in. To also play into why she's not so good with it. In being social situations, and another thing is that it was something my brother told me when I was picking him up from Spokane to move in with me. It was along the way, and he was talking about like how much he kind of hates having Asperger's, because something about with my brother in particular, this isn't true for all people who have Asperger's, but with my brother, there are things that might be obvious to you or me, but they go over his head completely.
Yeah.
And he tells me that he kind of hates that he's that way, and if he could live without it, he would like it. And it's just, it's something I don't see like to my knowledge, has not portrayed all that honestly with characters who like have like or like autistic. Like they try to portray, oh, this is so cool, and it's like you really do not understand. People like this actually would like to be normal. They kind of,
it just makes them struggle so hard with things.
Yeah, it's like living with a handicap is just not something. It's like I see a lot of stories that kind of almost want to romanticize living with a handicap. I mean, look, overcoming a handicap, that's admirable. That's a good story. But people like that wouldn't give anything to be normal.
So you want to kind of portray that isolation and the wish that she wishes she could be like the others, kind of in changing.
Yeah, she'd rather. Yeah, if she could have her way, if Maeve could have her way, she'd rather just be like all the other kids. In fact, she literally says that in the first issue.
Nice, yeah, that's cool. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and
I
the
think
thing
most
is
people
that
would really. That's the whole thing, because that's what most people, like you said, what everybody wants really, just to be normal. Like everybody else.
Yeah, you know, Dustquill says in the chat, he says, talk about a coming of age story, and says it's just something that makes sense to you in character creation sense.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just that because I mean, like when you get right down to it, like most young people, like they don't want to stand out. They just want to be normal. They just want to be accepted by their peers, and it's like, I mean, like high school is rough if you're an outsider. Doesn't for both, whether you're a boy or a girl. Like if you're a boy, the other boys won't always want to pick on you because you're weaker than them, or I mean, like because it's all a domination game at that point. But with girls, like they'll exclude you just because you're weird, and it's like, I mean, hell, it's arguably even worse when you go back to grade school because like a lot of, I don't know how many people really acknowledge this. This is like how many storytellers really acknowledge this, but kids they can be cruel. Like they can be mean without really meaning to be.
Oh yeah.
They just see something that looks weird and they want to stay away from it.
Or they'll just pick on it. You know, they'll gang up and make fun of someone who's just a little bit different.
Yeah, it's like
it's part of growing up. You know.
Yeah, I know. I think that's kind of the strength Maeve has is that even though not everyone has her problems, they are very relatable to most people.
Because they might not be the same problems, but they're similar enough, or there's the fact that they just have those problems and trying to navigate their growing up in high school and in their environment. So I can totally see that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think like one thing Maeve does a lot in high school, which was something I did a lot, but I had different reasons. Is she just wants to kind of be invisible. Well, she doesn't want to be noticed. I just sort of ghosted my way through high school just because I wasn't antisocial because I wasn't good at talking to people. I was antisocial through high school just because I was kind of misanthropic.
Okay.
Let's just say without going into too much detail, like my high school years, particularly my senior year of high school, were probably one of the lowest points of my life emotionally.
Really?
Yeah, it's to go any deeper, that would sort of allude to events that are going to happen later in the book.
True. Fiction takes on the form of true life.
Well, more like, or is it? Well, I was
Which one is the other way?
Well, they're supposed to say life imitates art, or I don't know,
something like that,
right? Which whatever.
So, Matt, what can you tell us about Elthio's character and what she's like?
Well, she's in a way she can relate to Maeve in that she was basically, I don't mean to say abandoned by her parents, but she was right after she was born. She was adopted by her current family and just had something of a normal childhood at the beginning, but then she just kind of drifted off after finding out that her parents aren't her real parents. But during those years, she was watched over by her familiar, Gallatin, who more or less was her protector, and then eventually became her mentor when he told her about how she was at birth. She was recruited into the Order of Mythics, which is an ancient order that humans and spirits were united in keeping the balance between the realms of the supernatural and the mortal world, up until the time that the Paladins come into play, and they have to maintain their numbers relatively low and keep their recruits secret. Now, Althea, the name that she's actually been given was Maria, but Althea is and so her middle name is Althea, and that's given because for them names have power. So you'll never see Althea give her first name to anyone unless you can absolutely trust them.
It gives a power over her that she isn't not comfortable with.
Basically. And Althea and Gallatin have something of a father-daughter relationship, so don't expect any romance between the two in any shape or form. Just a relationship that's based on mutual respect. And she's got a lot of hang-ups of her own, as I said before. Changelings, she has a soft spot for because of that background where she was abandoned by her parents, which is basically what the Fae do when they take human babies and replace them with their own.
Baby swapping, man? That's dark.
Well, blame mythology.
I was gonna say, they're weird like that. They'll take him for whatever reason. Maybe they just want the baby. Maybe they think it's a funny trick to play on humans. Maybe they don't want the baby they have. Could be whatever. They have a logic all their own that we can't understand.
Yeah, and with this first story arc, you'll see how much Althea does care for changelings when she has to protect a changeling baby from both witches who want to sacrifice the baby for personal power, and from the paladins who have been placed on the hunt after the witches accidentally kill one of their own when he decides to go off on his own, which is a trainee paladin who thought that he could do it all by himself. So they're out to find the child, exact revenge upon the murderers, or justice, and take the changeling into their own service.
Can you talk about what? Well, it might be getting too much into it, but when does this take place? This story?
About 2007.
Interesting.
So we're gonna have a bunch of retro technology in there, and it feels weird calling it retro because it's only about 12 years.
It counts, right?
Yeah, but at this rate, it might as well be.
Yeah, for real. Now, is there any potential chance that we could be seeing that changeling baby down the road?
Yes.
And it's not Maeve. We have been confirmed that it isn't Maeve.
No, I think Maeve is about 3 years old at the time.
Maeve was born in 2003, and also this mythic story happens in Michigan.
Yep.
And Maeve has the birth certificate to prove she quote born in Aberdeen.
So it'll be interesting to see how this changeling comes about and to see how that'll play into the larger shared universe down the road and leave some potential plot hole or not potholes, plot that you could explore.
Although if you do pay attention, you will see a familiar face pop up in Mythics and thanks.
Nice.
And I've got a lot of stuff that's planned to tease future plot lines.
Nice.
And despite what I've been saying on Twitter to torment a certain indie comics PR guy, I do have plans to continue on, and the ending for the first story arc is kind of a cliffhanger.
So it kind of leaves things open for potentially picking up in the next issue?
Yep.
Nice. That's perfect. You always got to hook them in with a nice cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah. And then the story arc after that will be interesting.
So we got a young fake creature who's trying to fit in. We've got a mythic who's. Am I getting that she's kind of a very powerful individual?
Yes, and one thing I found interesting with British folklore when I came to the cunning folk was that historically, cunning folk never viewed their magic as something religious. It was always something more of as a tool. So when Christianity came around and the witch hunts happened, most cunning folk converted to Christianity rather than die with some overzealous belief that what they do is divine.
Adapt or die, right?
Yep, they even included some Christian figures in their spells.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Now, let's see. We have a few questions in the chat forming up, but before we get to that, I just wanted to say, Dan, is there anything you could tell us a little bit about Adobe Kroger?
Sure. Okay. So mainly two of the major themes that I'm exploring in the entire Adobe Kroger property are mental illness and childhood trauma and their effect on society as a whole. So Adobe herself, she was born in 1991 while her father was in the first Iraq War. And when she was 10, he was deployed again to Afghanistan and died while deployed. And ever since then, her mother, who you gradually learn has borderline personality disorder, dated and remarried a number of very abusive men that, suffice to say, gave Adobe a very rough adolescence. And she ended up turning into the worst kind of addict and juvenile delinquent, and she had one last chance to avoid going to prison, and that was being sent to a reform Catholic school for girls, which turned out to be a front for recruiting young paladins if they were found to be sensitive to the light. So what is a paladin in this world? Well, back in 1200 years ago, Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne and his famous 12 peers were actual holy magic wielding warriors that were formed as a counterattack to the increasing violence of chaotic demonic forces in a hope to defend humanity from them and contain the threat. And they were so successful that the Paladins ended up becoming this world-spanning organization that by our current day ends up controlling every world government and military clandestinely. and Adobe is one of them. She's very much unaware of all the various high-level machinations of the order, but from where she's concerned, she's finally has an opportunity to make good. She blames herself for a lot of everything that happened to her. She's unable to contextualize her abuse or her neglect at the hands of her parents. So that ends up playing a lot into her worldview and to her self-image, and that ends up leading her to make some pretty terrible decisions that have far-reaching consequences now that she has power. So she is, all in all, a fairly good person, but she has a lot of mental baggage that, and she is at this point so damaged that it's doubtful that she can form healthy relationships with people. So, so while she has a good heart, but she's full of such self-contempt and hatred that she has trouble even understanding anything that she does that's good. So her arc will be her coming to realize that, hey, this wasn't your fault. You were a child, you were helpless, and all this sort of thing. And the more she comes to terms with that, the more powerful she becomes, and her conviction and her ability to affect good in the world. Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like she's a very, as you said, a very troubled character. So it'll be cool to see how she overcomes those demons that she has, so to speak.
That's right, and nice that you said that, because one of the taglines I like to say is that her inner demons are often more difficult to smite than the flesh and blood reality.
Really? Interesting. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Now in the chat we have a couple questions that I wanted to get to. Let's see here. Blind Artist 93. In combined with his earlier question, he says, "Are you going to be expanding on to new titles and creators in the Mythoverse as you go along? And would the creators be willing? Would you, as the creators, be willing to allow other creators to add in their own original characters to the Mythoverse if it made sense?"
Well, that's not good. Sorry, Dan.
No, go ahead.
We actually are planning on that. In fact, right now what the three of us are doing is essentially phase one of the Mythoverse, and we've even lined up a couple other creators. Are we at liberty to name them?
Well, Duskwill already announced it on Twitter.
All right, so we have creators like Duskwill and Sauron, who have when we've talked with a lot, and they've got ideas that we think can work. So about the only requirement you gotta meet is that you are able to work within sort of the rules we've set up.
So it's a possibility. So you're kind of looking into expanding into other creators and talking with some creators and stuff. So sounds Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason why creators have to sort of be able to abide by the rules we set was it's for consistency, and we want the universe to have even though each book has its own flavor, so to speak. I think what it needs to feel mostly is consistent, which is something I feel has been lacking in certain big name publishers. I'm not going to name names, but they run with Harl and Heasey.
I wonder which ones those could be.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like if you've got an idea and you think you can work, you can abide by the rules of the universe we've set. Like in our case, we didn't really have to make any changes at all to our stuff, and then I don't think, and as far as I know, neither Duskwill or Sauron have run into that problem either. So yeah,
very cool.
Yeah.
Now we have one more question from the chat I wanted to get to real quick, and that is, where was it? For each of the panelists, Mecha Studios asks, for each of the panelists, how do you each approach your writing process?
Well, speaking for myself, it's all heavily character-driven rather than event-driven. So the way I see it is, rather than say this happens, then this happens, then this happens, I come up with a basic premise, and then I throw the character as I know it into them, and then I ask the character how they would react or what they would do based upon what I know about them and what they want. And that's kind of what I did with the first arc of Adobe Kroger Dame Commander. Is I said, hey, Adobe, you're leading a small team. This is your first mission. You got to rescue a bunch of girls from a cult. Go do it. How would you do it? So based on what I know about her level of mental competency and experience, I tried to devise a plan that she would execute that would fit that level of experience. And it may not be the best plan, as we'll see, but the fact of the matter is, it's what she would be able to come up with. I try very, very hard to not insert myself too much into the character's mind beyond maybe like general attitudes or philosophies. But I want to make sure that I say, hey, Adobe is competent, but she's not a super genius, so she might not think of everything, and she might say, hey, why didn't she think of this? And it's like, well, she's human, she makes mistakes, and that sort of thing. So I try to let the character lead the way as best as I can, and I use that as my calculus and my foundation, rather than saying, this happens, you're my puppet, go do it.
Having read Adobe Kroger Knight Errant while I had the audiobook, I always sort of got the impression Adobe was someone who does better thinking on her feet.
Yes, she's not a good strategical thinker, but she's a very strong tactical thinker. That was what I was trying to get out.
She's very good at coming up with situations on the fly, coming up with solutions on the fly.
And Brett, how do you approach your writing process?
Okay, so to get in the nitty gritty of it, I always start with like an outline of what the issue's plot is going to be. It's just a basic synopsis, and the purpose for that is to give me some kind of direction. It's very loose and open ended, but it helps me at least kind of have an idea. Okay, so I know how the story's gonna. I know how this story's gonna go. I just gotta fill. Now all I gotta do is fill in the blanks. And that helps me because, like I said, well, I've got some direction to work with. I also have space to improvise and change things if I have to, because ultimately I want the story to feel like the characters. I want the characters in the story to feel like they have agency. Like, I'm kind of the same with Dan. It's character driven, because I don't want everything feeling mechanical or feeling like they're just being moved around like pawns on a chessboard. I want them to feel like they're making their own decisions and they're dealing with the consequences of those decisions, good and bad.
Nice.
And
yeah.
I think Maeve is in for a lot of surprises, because like one thing about teenagers is that they tend to overestimate their own abilities. Or how much they actually know. They will act very sure of themselves and act like they know everything, when in reality they don't know anything at all.
Yeah, it's very true. That's the typical young person's mentality, right? I know it all and you know nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, she's just so. And like I said, so she's gonna be making a lot of mistakes.
But hopefully she'll learn from those mistakes.
She'll learn from some of them.
Some of them.
You can't expect them all.
I can't win them all, right? And then Matt, how do you approach your writing process?
What I'm going to say will make people think that there's a connection between the three of us, and we might not be three separate people, but I approach it as I would with the character. So I'll ask the character what they were going to do if this happened. Because, like Dan and Brett, I like character-driven stories. And can't have a character-driven story if you're telling the character what to do rather than the character telling you what they're going to do.
So you're definitely a more of a pantser, I think is the term they use for it, where you kind of like. What? I've always thought there was I was doing a writing class and they were saying there's two kinds of writers, a pantser and a plotter, A plotter is someone who sits out and plots the entire story out from the beginning before they even start writing. Whereas a pantser is more someone who kind of like you put on pants. You want you kind of basically let the story lead you, and kind of the plot kind of is created as you write the story.
I do a little of both.
Hmm.
I have a story in mind first, and then basically, if the character decides to do something else, then I'll go with what the character does.
So you'll create a story and then kind of let it lead you where it goes if things come up as you kind of write it out.
Yep, and from what I've seen, it also allows for some unexpected stuff to do. I have unexpected stuff happen to the characters. There are some things, some story arcs will probably come from them doing something they didn't want to do, and with the consequences of that action.
And how that will play out over the coming issues.
Yep.
Hey, wasn't there a writer who said like our method of writing is poor discipline or something?
Oh yeah, the guy who we're waiting on, going on what, not 8 years, still no book 3.
I don't think people know who we're talking about.
Yeah, well, there is an author who has a popular book trilogy out. I'm not gonna name names because I don't want to seem petty or anything like that.
George R. R. Martin? Let's just call him George R. R. Martin for
Well, it's not George R. R. Martin because he's already got past his 3rd book.
Fair enough, yeah.
But there was a live stream where with a bunch of writers where it was him. Basically, he talked about how he doesn't like letting the characters do what they want to do because he believes it's poor discipline.
Oh man, what a hard ass.
That's a little weird.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's why he's seen him 8 years.
Yeah, well, he's like very strict with his character. He's like, no, you do what I tell you. I'm the creator. You do what I say.
I'll give you a shot of thinking if you don't.
It's an interesting way of looking at it.
So you guys were talking about the campaign being on Kickstarter on the 25th. Is there a little bit that you guys can tell us at this time, or are you guys still building it right now?
Yeah, the campaign is in a pretty good spot right now. We've been spending the last couple of months ramping up promotion. We're heavily on Instagram. We've been building up a following there, and that's going really well. I highly recommend that anyone going for a campaign go on Instagram and run some promos. You can build an audience very well, and there's a lot of engagement over there if you do it right. And in terms of the campaign, yeah, we have our tiers figured out. We got several of our perks figured out. We're working on a couple of rewards for the first X number of backers that I think we'll discuss more when they're a bit more solidified. But we really want to reward the people who adopt early, especially at the higher tiers. So we have a number of ideas to that end, like the first 20 backers at the $30 level, for instance, get this special reward. And we think that'll really add a lot of excitement and value to the campaign.
And so you kind of still working on the tiers then?
The tiers are largely figured out.
Okay.
We can probably go ahead and we'll probably end up tweaking them a little bit, but I think the general idea is there. We have a $1 tier for someone who just wants to toss us a tip, and they will get a personalized email with original chibi artwork from me thanking them by name. We got a digital art tier, which unfortunately is the only way non-US backers will be able to read the books, because we do not have plans to fulfill physical copies outside the United States at this time until we figure out a good way to make that economical. Then after that, we have 3 different print tiers where you can get the digital books and a print copy of one of the books of your choice. If you choose like the Mythics tier, you get a print copy of Mythics, etc. And then we have the tier where you get all 3 print books with the original covers, which have been shared on Twitter a couple of times. And then above that, we have the premium tier where you get all 3 books with the special variant cover that forms a beautiful triptych image that was done by a wonderful artist who is also working on another project we have yet to reveal with us. Her name's Antonella. And that will be the tier that we're trying to work in some special early adopter rewards.
So in when you say early adopter rewards, it's almost like an early bird special. So the earlier you back it, the better deal you get.
Yeah, it's kind of along the same lines of what the Wand Pool campaign did, where if you were the first 25 or so backers, you get a poker chip.
Ah, yes, that's very nice. What's just the first 25 on the Wand Pool one?
I think it was, well, there was the first one got a special reward. The first 25, I think, got another one. And
I feel like I got I feel like I got one of the poker chips. I think it might have been one of the first 20 ones actually. I was right there at the beginning of the launch. So, but that's interesting. I like those kind of little kind of bonus things you can get, and kind of special ways to get people who are rewarding people who are really getting there early.
Yes. One thing that we are playing with is to provide an actual copy of, well, not a copy, but a replica of Maeve's hoodie. And my wife and I are prototyping one right now.
Nice.
And if it all works out, then the first lucky backer at such and such a level will get a Maeve hoodie. We'll see how that works.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Right now, his daughter is modeling the children's size, and our friend Lenore, who also designed the logo for the Mythoverse, or she was just an absolute talent and a really wonderful person. She agreed to model the adult size.
Very nice. That'll look really cool. That'll be a good way to get it out there too.
Yep. So we'll have those 2 prototypes available, and if they fit you, great. And if not, just let us know what your size is, and if you're lucky enough to get it, then we'll make it for you.
With if the Maeve hoodie goes down and it's an awesome success, it could open up things for future clothing products for potentially future campaigns just for a sale.
Absolutely.
It would be great. The only snag is because Maeve's hoodie's just so unique. We'd have to. It's at this point it's kind of difficult to mass produce.
Yes, I could see that, but they could be small run batches. You could do you could do them like you said. You're going to do the Maeve hoodie, but you could also do like an Adobe Kroger jacket. So there's potential there for different ideas with that.
Yeah, I do plan to make her Crusader hoodie available, the white hoodie with the Crusader cross on it.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that. I was thinking about the one you have on the in the comic.
Oh yeah, yes, her. That's her combat equipment.
Nice.
It would be very cool to make that available sometime down the line.
Exactly, something to look down for in the future potentially.
Mm-hmm. But as of right now, we're trying to keep our campaign lean and mean. Most of the tiers involve a book or a poster. I forgot to mention at the top tier, you also get this amazing, I think it's Matt's icon is a small part of it, Luigi Terrell of the Rags team made this fantastic pinup of all 3 leading ladies sitting on a top of a building in front of a beautiful sunset. And without any direction from us, aside from this person stands here and sits there, he managed to capture the essential characteristics of all 3 characters. You got Maeve there with her sidelong glance, like most teenagers give their parents when they ask them why they're still on their phone. Then you have Althea, looks like she's thinking about something that's really pressing hard on her mind. She looks thoughtful and a little bit concerned, and she's gripping one of her wrists. And Adobe's just in the foreground with a shit-eating grin. So that's perfect.
Kind of explains each of their personalities quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah, without saying a word, we know a lot about each of the 3 characters. And yeah, Luigi just has a really strong instinct for these things. I mean, we just said here, we want Althea sitting back there. We want Adobe standing here. But yeah, he added all the character touches himself. So kudos to him.
You didn't have to really tell him very much for him to be able to get all that out of the characters?
Yeah, I think he just looked at reference photos and said, okay, this looks appropriate for her. This looks appropriate for her.
Nice. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's he's a great artist. So I can see that he'd be really kind of intuitive with that.
Yeah, I was thrilled to see our characters rendered by him.
Speaking of which, you've gotten a lot of fan art from the different characters and that you guys have had. And what do you think it is about the characters that people have latched onto and connected with us so much?
Well, in Maeve's case, it's because she's freaking adorable. That's one. Okay. She's an adorable little anime girl who loves to play with cats. I mean, that's fan art bait if there ever was one. But yeah, she's fun to draw. She's got the fun design. Her hoodie's unique and distinct, and she's got the little pointy ears, and you can do a lot of things with her. And it's just, it's fun to draw Maeve. Like my artist Leandro, we're having him do an all three ladies pinup. He's going to be working on it shortly, and he had already been practicing drawing Maeve. It's just something about Maeve that's fun to draw. She's an appealing design. She's a fun character. And as far as Adobe goes, I mean, the fan art that I've gotten from her primarily revolves around the fact that she's a holy warrior. Like, people like that concept. There's something appealing about, humans empowered by God to smite evil. It's just a nice primordial little thing that people can connect with.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds good. And you guys were going to start your campaign a little bit earlier, but you guys moved it back to the April 25th. And so I was curious, was there any particular reasoning behind wanting to move it back a little bit?
Sure. There are two things. I had commissioned Brett Smith, the industry veteran colorist, to color Adobe Kroger's cover. And I had a conversation with him recently. And he's run a number of successful campaigns, and he's a longtime veteran of the industry. So he had a lot of good insight to offer us that I basically had to take like a whole page of notes because he had so many good suggestions. But one of them was that, April sucks. Like, early April sucks for crowdfunding because it's right before tax season and people have that, tax bill on their minds, and they're not sure if they're going to get their refund back yet or any of that. That's number one. So we decided to move our campaign to the other end of tax season. Number two is that according to trends that I was able to research online, the best month for crowdfunding in 2018 was May. That's when all the campaign has made the most money. So it makes sense. It's right after tax season. So I decided, let's move it to the 25th. We'll be after tax season, and we'll be right on top of what last year at least was the most successful crowdfunding month.
I mean, come on, Brett's been in the business for like 20 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and he's run a number of successful campaigns.
The guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's a sharp guy. He's has a lot of experience and contacts in the industry. Got a lot of fantastic information from him, and I'm really glad to be working with him. And he's actually very thrilled to be. He said he was excited to work with us in the future. So I will be working with him. And if we make a metric F ton of money on the campaign, I'll see about having him color Adobe Kroger. I would love to see that. Adobe Kroger works really good in black and white, but I would love to have him drop his colors on it.
Yeah, no, his color was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got a copy of Jawbreakers right here, and he really brings it to life, especially with the atmospheric effects, like the sunrise, sunset, lens flare, all the dynamic lighting. It's fantastic. So I would love to have him work on it. It's just like it's not in the budget.
Yeah, he's more of a cover guy. For some people,
I mean, you get what you pay for, and I'm glad I got him. It was worth every penny because the cover is just astoundingly good. But if I want to add him to the interiors, it will be like an entirely separate book being funded.
Maybe, yeah. Probably we should probably consider that if there's demand for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if the campaign goes well, sure, why not?
We'll see. Yeah, could be even a stretch goal, perhaps down the line.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's true.
$25,000 Adobe Kroger gets covered.
The only thing I'm thinking about when it comes to stretch goals is just getting the next issue paid for my team, just so because funding out of my own pocket is just. I mean, it could still be done. It would just take a really long time.
Yeah, to that point, Brett, I'm glad you brought that up because I see this crowdfunding campaign not as like a way to pay for these 3 books, but as a way to launch our brand. So this is it. When you support a crowdfunding campaign, you're kind of speculating. You're not really buying a book. You're speculating in the characters and the creators and the brand. And our goal here is to build like a strong, long-running line of really good stories, not just these first 3 books.
What we want to do ultimately is get this machine to the point where it's self-sustainable.
Right, exactly. And we will get there. We have a lot of plans. The crowdfunding campaign is just the first step. We're dipping our toe in the market. We're seeing if we've done our homework right, if we've done enough outreach to build up enough demand for our product. If we do, then great, we'll move on to the next phase. Yeah. If not, we, as they say in the old World of Warcraft guilds, release, run back, and try again.
Now, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say though, I think like I have a strong feeling that we can't succeed on this not just because of the fan base we've managed to cultivate. We've also managed to link up with a lot of good people. We've built a very good support network as well.
Of course, I've got this. I'm also planning for failure because there's going to be some kind of barrier that we're going to have to overcome during the crowdfunding. And that's one of those things is that there are books that have been, some creators have gone on Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Some have good intentions. They'll get their books out, but they'll be late. And then there's going to be some that will just not have the book come out at all. I've actually backed a couple of books that never came out. So,
well, that's unfortunate, but all I can say is these books are coming out regardless. Yep. If I have to pay for them all myself, they're coming out. But we would very much prefer the support of our readers and our fans, because if this campaign is a success, we're going to definitely, like Brett said, we're going to concentrate on just putting out more content later, rather than we're not going to try to overwhelm the readers with options in this campaign. We're just saying, here's our books, here's a cool poster, here's a little perks if you backed it early, but any excess is going to go towards building our brand, and that means more books, more characters, more creators, and higher quality down the road.
Yeah. Just to clarify, one of the things I should probably clarify on is that I've noticed a trend with a lot of first-time Kickstarters and Indiegogos don't do well because it's their first time. People are going to wonder if it's going to ever come, if they can trust them, and that's how second campaigns usually gets funded before after the first one. So there's a lot of. I found it to be quite interesting researching these trends.
You would think people would have at least a better feeling about Kickstarter, just because, well, unlike Indiegogo with a Kickstarter, if you don't make the goal, you don't get the money.
Well, there's also a problem that I've seen with Kickstarter. Some campaigns will have people who will initially back it and then drop out in the last week.
Oh yeah, that's something you always have to take into account. But I think Kickstarter as a whole has more foot traffic for comic creators, and there's less of a perception of risk because if the campaign doesn't fund, you keep your money. So there's that, and I think that's primarily the reason we elected to go with Kickstarter was the perception.
So how did you guys come to work with your various team members, from your line artist, your colorist, and beyond?
Okay, well, I bumped into Leandro online, which is something that is a modern phenomenon. Were this 30 years ago, I would never have known he existed. And there are actually a large number of very talented artists in the places you would least expect them. I mean, Luigi from Rags, he's in the Philippines, and so is Leandro. And I never would have thought to look for an artist there, nor would I have had the ability to look for an artist there 30 years ago.
Well, Will Spartasio came from the Philippines.
Who did?
Will Spartasio.
Oh,
he was
cool.
one of the Image guys.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I would not have been able to find him without the internet. And so I saw his artwork, and I was shopping around for a penciler for this project that I had in mind since I don't know, I want to say 2016. I had the basic storyline in place because the novel was complete, the audiobook was in production, and I was looking towards expanding into other media. So I saw his artwork, and he had such a strong, crisp style that I felt was perfect for what I wanted to accomplish. So I just commissioned like 6 or 7 pinups from him. And that's usually how I find the artist that I want to work with is well, first of all, yeah, he's good. He's damn good. I mean, one of the best artists I've ever seen, but he's also very prompt and very professional and very polite and very courteous, and he is grateful for the opportunity to work. And that's something, all those things together is just made working with him such a delight that I'm like, hey, I've got this script. You want to work on it? And he's like, yeah, I got a whole bunch of stuff to do, but I can get started on it like at the end of the year. And so I waited for several months until he was available, and then we got started. And that was it. I mean, he just started knocking him out of the park immediately. And I have to tell you, I was a real jerk as a script writer because I set this first issue in the middle of a sea of skyscrapers. And I had a number of scenes where I had a number of scenes where the characters were floating above dozens of skyscrapers. And he just did them. He didn't say, hey, I don't want to draw these buildings. You know, there's such a pain in the ass to draw this level of detail. He just did it, knocked it out of the park, and I was like, okay, no matter what happens, you're getting paid in full for this issue because I want to see this thing finished with your artwork. So, and in terms of the letters, well, I just saw Eric Weathers say, anyone need a letterer? And I said, I do. He said, cool. And that was it. So that's how I came to work with him. And in terms of working with Brett Smith, there was a tweet where Ethan Van Sciver had said, you know, essentially like, show me what you're working on. You know, like stop complaining about my work. Show me what you're working on, you know? And I said, okay, yo, here you are. And I showed him a couple of Leandro's pages, and it just literally blew up. Like, and Brett actually messaged me and says, hey, I would love to color that, essentially, like not in so many words, but the gist of it was I would love to color that. And I said, absolutely.
What are you going to do, turn him down?
Yeah, it panned out.
Yeah.
He's a very busy guy, but he actually reached out to me, and he was so happy with the artwork and impressed with it that he said, I want to collaborate with this guy. And I say, well, this is great because I want Leandro to really take off because he really deserves to. He works very hard. He does great work. So when I finally got a couple of pages done, I said, hey, Leandro, here's my cover concept, and I want Brett to color it. So he got that done recently, and I could not be happier with the result. So that's, you know, it's all very organic, you know. I saw someone that I thought would work, and I said, hey, do you want to work with me? They're like, sure. Okay. And off we go.
That's awesome. Matt B, I know Matt B was wanting to ask a question with you guys. Did you have something on your mind?
Well, I kind of figured everybody else could go ahead and finish off with theirs.
I think did you guys have more you wanted to say on that point?
I think it's talk.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Told us how we found our people.
Sorry about that. My bad.
All right.
I was jumping ahead of myself. So, Brett, why don't you tell us about how you started working with your teammates on your comic?
Okay, so I have Victor Campon, who does the line art and inks, and Ginger Foxy, who does colors and letters. Victor was initially not the first person I reached out to. I had another artist I was going to work with, but then she had a job opportunity come up that she just, it was too good of an opportunity. It was too good for her to pass. So she had to take it, and it was like, I mean, I couldn't hold it against her. So I was sort of stuck looking for a new artist, and I kind of was very picky because I wanted in my head, I wanted this to, because I was sort of pulling in stuff from my youth, like because when I was May's age, I was really into anime and manga like Bleach, and I just wanted that aesthetic for it. So I wanted an artist who worked in that kind of aesthetic. And one of my mutuals suggested Victor to me. I reached out to him. He was interested, and he did a couple of character sketches. He nailed it, especially because he was really good with the expressions, which was something I noticed very, very early on. Like, he was just really good at that. And it was something that just I just sort of had a good feeling about working with him. Now, as far as color went, this was kind of influenced by Cody's first colorist, Matthias on Jack Irons, just because something that blew me away about the colors on the first Jack Irons book was just how well they sold the atmosphere, and I knew that Changeling was going to be a book that would live and die by its ability, by atmosphere, and I needed a colorist who could pull that off. Unfortunately, I almost wanted to get Matthias, but he wasn't available. Mm-hmm. So I just put out an art called Ginger. I don't remember if she was one of the people or the only person that responded back. I took a look at her portfolio. What I saw looked good, so I decided to give her a try. Right, and her coloring actually gelled very well with Victor's line art. So I essentially just rolled the dice, and I just rolled the dice on both of them, and I won, and I got 7s.
It couldn't have been a more perfect match, it sounds like.
Yeah, like it's. Yeah, I mean, like if I could do it over, I probably would have gone through I probably would have gone for a bit more rigorous, tested a lot more artists. Maybe would have still come out. I probably still would have come to the same conclusion, but I'm still glad that I took a chance, and so far it's paid off, and they both love working on the book, and it's actually been a good opportunity for Ginger because now she's gotten work on Sporkman and I'm hoping that if anything, this is going to open doors for them as well, or more doors for them.
Nice, something to keep your artist keep going with more work.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, like I said, I think that the thing that kind of just blows me away is, like I said, I essentially just took a chance on both of them, and it worked, and it paid off. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many people can actually say that.
True, right? Yeah, I mean, you took that leap of faith, and like you said, it played out perfectly.
It did, and I'm just happy. I'm just very happy about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Matt, how did you come into meeting with your creators, with your artists?
Well, Beth Varney is the artist, colorist, and letterer, and I first time that I took notice of her was with a webcomic called The Tainted, where it was a fantasy comic, and it was, I think, about 2013, 2014 when I found it. But it was interesting to watch an artist go through an evolution on that comic. And even then, right now, despite it ending back in 2015, what she does now completely blows it out of the water. So, back in 2015, when probably not long after she stopped updating it, I found her website and contacted her to do some comic pitches, one of which was the original pitch for Mythics. And basically it all came together right there.
Mm-hmm. So, is that original story pitch that you did? Is that part of what we're going to be seeing in the Kickstarter?
No, what we're going to see is her 10 years before that pitch. Because technically in Mythics, that takes place when she's in her 30s.
So it's a bit of a prequel or an origin story, you might say. Well, prequel maybe.
Basically, and that story will be told. The story that was pitched will be told later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. It sounds like you, and she does the colors on the comic as well, or?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What's that?
Yep.
Oh wow.
That's her. That's all her work.
Dang, so she's very multi-talented.
Yep.
I have said that Beth is the hardest working woman in comics, and I mean that unironically.
Really?
She disagrees, though.
Too modest, huh?
I think she's just being humble.
Yeah. Sign of a good creator.
Yeah, I can confirm that she's not someone who brags about her work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something she just enjoys doing.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
And nothing can make me happier than keeping creative people who enjoy what they're doing busy.
That's usually the best thing for them.
Exactly, yeah. So, go ahead.
Oh, well, the one thing I have to say that's interesting about her is that she's at a point that she can be picky about what she does. So know that when you read my comic, you're going to get the absolute best from her.
In terms of her trying to put forth her best effort, you mean, or?
Yep.
She's a perfectionist.
Best work, her best everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, my question, real quick. When after the Kickstarter is complete and things are moving along, do you guys plan to, at some point, explore other mythologies, or are you kind of going to go ahead and leave that up to other creators?
Well, right now, I'm going to try to stay focused on my corner of the universe. I mean, the possibilities are quite literally endless, and I'm more than happy to explore new mythologies. But I think I would love to see other creators' takes on them personally.
I think with Mythics, I'm in the best place to explore other mythologies, and they're basically in their place with the melting pot of American society.
Yeah, like I think the best way I can sum it up is Adobe Kroger is Hellboy. Mythics is Hellblazer, and Changeling is Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
That's a very apt and very cogent summation, yes.
Yeah.
Although Althea is not as much of an asshole as John Constantine.
And not a chain smoker.
Only when she's roasting Adobe.
Right, yeah.
She might become one. We don't
Hopefully,
know.
we'll see.
Also, I don't think Althea would willingly sacrifice other people to fulfill her own goals.
Althea's not quite as self-centered, it sounds like.
No. She might act that way sometimes, but no.
Like John Constantine has sacrificed his own friends before, but to his credit, he doesn't take any pleasure in doing it.
He's the king of throwing his friends under the bus to save his own ass.
well, not just to save his own ass. It's like sometimes he has to do one. He kind of has to do like one bad thing to keep a worse thing from happening.
True. Which he usually caused himself in some sort of way or another. But
also, unlike Hellboy, I don't think Adobe is like the key to the apocalypse or something.
Not yet,
she does.
not deliberately. not deliberately.
Hey, whoever does start the apocalypse deliberately, right?
I just remembered in Adobe Knight Errant, like she did.
Spoiler alert. Is this a spoiler?
Like she's the key to the she holds the key to the apocalypse by accident.
Yeah, it's not something she's like the anti-chosen one. She's the accidental one.
Yeah. So do you recommend? So when for that, that's actually an interesting kind of a side question. For Adobe Kroger, do you recommend people read Dame Commander before they read Knight Errant?
That's a very good question because in Knight Errant we visit her like a year after the events of this, and she does reference these adventures, but there really aren't any massive spoilers to be had for Dame Commander in Knight Errant. So basically, it's an offhand paragraph where she references adventures she had with these two teammates.
So you can really choose any order you'd prefer.
Right. And Knight Errant is more of a character study. It's told first-person perspective, and we're in her head the entire time, and we're not sure how reliable or intelligent a narrator she is. So she may be getting a lot of things wrong. And Dame Commander, it's more of an omniscient third-person perspective. It's she's in her prime. She's got all of her gear. She's at the top of her game, more or less, and it's more action-oriented.
Nice. So I like that you have the two different takes on the character in like a bit of a different stage in her life, you might say.
Yes. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think you can enjoy them in either order.
Okay.
But I honestly think that the comic is its own self-contained story that leads into what will eventually happen in the book. But the book won't be spoiled by it, and the other way around.
Nice. So feel free to read either one.
Also, I just want to clarify one thing. Biggest difference between Maeve and Buffy is that Maeve isn't in some kind of prophecy. She's not destined to save the world, and Aberdeen is not built over a portal to hell like Sunnydale.
Now,
there's no hellmouths in our world.
Each of your comics take place in a kind of unique setting. Do you care to share maybe a little bit about that?
Well, Changeling is in Aberdeen, Washington, and I wanted to set it in Aberdeen mainly because I wanted to. I mean, it's no secret. I despise Seattle. And even though I like Tacoma a hell of a lot better, having lived in Tacoma for about 3 years right now, I love it, but something about the vibe just doesn't click. It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't
really
have it. Let me put it this way: if Changeling was in Tacoma, I think it wouldn't be the same story, because what I wanted Changeling to be like a fairy tale, and the thing about fairy tales is the setting. It's always in a more rural setting. It's away from civilization. There's more. You kind of have more access to the wilderness, sort of. It's a lot more open. And I mean, like it's easy to get that sort of atmosphere out in Washington, but I need it. But to make it work in a contemporary, because like Washington's full of evergreen forests, like it's easy to get. But to have sort of that contemporary urban fantasy feel, I need like a small town that's isolated, far away from a big city, and the best one that fit that was Aberdeen.
Nice. So have you made your trip up to Aberdeen yet?
I have not, and I actually found out from a coworker. That Aberdeen is kind of gone downhill. It's Aberdeen right now is essentially junkie central.
Really?
Hey, you never know with the comic; it might just help it out.
Yeah, well, I've been using Google Earth for Victor. That's helped out a lot. I mean, I probably still will be heading down to Aberdeen at some point. It's just a matter of being able to make the time. Depending on what I need. But Google Earth is actually able to fill in a lot of the blanks we have right now and cuts down on a lot of the cost. But yeah, essentially the the two pieces of advice my coworker told me was stay away from the riverfront, and if you're driving at night, don't stop.
Sounds like smart advice.
Yeah.
Now, what about Mythics and Adobe Kroger? Are they set in any kind of specific town or setting like that?
Hold up! I just want to say one thing that you are not going to, even though Aberdeen right in our world is a junky hellhole. It is none of that is going to be referenced in Changeling. You are not going to see any reference to shit like that.
Yeah, that's saved for Adobe Kroger. Anyway, so Adobe Kroger is she's was raised a military brat, so she's been all over the place. But in the novel, she is based in West Palm Beach, Florida. However, the events of Dame Commander take place all over the place. And one of the things that I think set it apart and a nice strong contrast to Changeling, this kind of worked out organically. Adobe Kroger's art is stark and black and white and very, very crisp and very, I guess you could say, almost claustrophobic because they're surrounded by all these giant buildings and all the settings are in these huge enclosed areas. And Changeling is much more colorful and has a lot more open space. And I think that's thematically appropriate because Adobe is trapped within her own head, so she's always bound in by walls. In issue 3, you're going to see her apartment is in this tenement slum. It's basically a huge box, and she's isolated in her mind and in reality. So that was why I went for that aesthetic primarily, because I wanted to convey that sort of a psychological damage she's going through.
And then Matt, what about you? What is the setting for your comic?
Well, in terms of Althea, originally I had in mind that she wouldn't have a specific place to stay. She'd be on the move all the time because as Mythic, that's what she does, since there's not too many of them. And well, the idea of a roaming writer for her seemed to really fit her. But as soon as I started working with Dan and Brett, I realized that she needed a place to call home. I figure, since they've got in their respective states, I'm going to set Althea in Michigan. And I've more or less made a fictional town that's based on the area I live.
It's a familiar setting then.
Yep.
Oh wait, so Blue Creek doesn't exist?
Nope.
That's interesting. That's an interesting choice. Yeah.
The cool thing about that is you can play with the geography and no one's going to fact check you.
Yeah, that is kind of nice.
I think I do know what he's talking about though, because okay, if Blue Creek is based off what I think it is, the short version, it's the cereal capital of the country.
Nope.
Oh wait, that's Battle Creek I'm thinking of.
Yep.
Yep.
But
Sue me, I was on the west side of Michigan.
No, it's based on a park.
So we're getting closer towards the end, but we have a handful more questions. But I just want to open up in the chat just in case anybody wants to ask some questions of their own and wants to get in here and ask the Mythoverse guys. But we wanted to talk to you guys just a little bit about what you can tell us about the future of the Mythoverse.
Yeah, as far as like any special locations or events that people should be looking forward to.
Well, personally, we've been bouncing around ideas for our first major crossover event, and it promises to be very entertaining for a number of reasons. I don't want to go into too many details, but I think Brett has referred to the ending of a very beloved, popular early 80s children's film.
That's something
Old
I
Yeller.
Old Yeller was not in the 80s. So
I know.
That's something that's gonna pop up at some point in Changeling. I also have like I don't okay. I've also hooked up with I've also had the pleasure of hooking up with another person who's agreed to be part of Art of Changeling. I'm not at liberty to reveal this person's identity at this time.
Mysterious.
But I will. But once the issue comes out, yeah, you guys are gonna be surprised.
Well, I do love surprises.
Very nice.
Also, I mean, like, I will say this much in regards to like our first our first Mythoverse event.
That was pretty exciting. Jeez.
It really was.
The best way I can. My big inspiration for this, the thing that just sort of told me, okay, I want to do this. I want to do something. I want to do something like this. Was me watching Godzilla Final Wars, and I just saw something like that, and I just realized we've got a way of doing something like that.
Yeah, and I won't spoil anything, but keep in mind the line that Tony Stark threw at Loki in the first Avengers film: "We have an army, we have a Hulk."
Or actually, I kind of prefer Gordon's line in Final Wars where he tells the Exilian controller, "There's two things about the Earth you don't know. One is me, the other's Godzilla."
Yeah, so that promises to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to see that one happen.
Yeah,
sounds epic.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
And Matt and I have also been bouncing around, another book between the two of us that will more than likely be making its debut in the Phase 2 of the Mythoverse, depending on how things go.
Phase 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Essentially, what is going to happen is we are going to get through the first volumes of our books, do the crossover event, and that is how we'll introduce Phase 2.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So there's a lot of promising things to look forward to in the expanding Mythoverse in the near future.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and the more interest is shown, the more we'll introduce.
Indeed.
Now, was there? We've talked a little bit about the campaign, which is opening up on April 25th. So make sure to follow them and back their campaign when it comes out. But you've each coming out with your own individual comics and your own stories. Are there unique messages that you guys are trying to convey through your comics?
Yeah, absolutely. For me as a parent, raising children peacefully and not traumatizing them could very well bring us to world peace. No, just kidding. That's a little bit simplistic, but a lot of times adults forget, like, these little things that they blow off and forget about the next minute. A child will remember long into adulthood, and I have several examples of that I've spoken with Matt and Brett about. So one of the things that I'm trying to get forward with Adobe Kroger is, treat your kids nicely, please. And chances are we'll have a lot fewer damaged, terrible people in the world.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It's a very nice one.
He has a very humane message trying to bring across.
Yeah. In my case, it's that I think I'm not really sure. It's sort of just working. It's sort of just learning to find your identity, figure out who you are, and it's okay that if you don't. It's okay if you don't have all the answers, because you'll just try and find adults in your life that you can trust. Try and find people that have your best interests at heart, and hopefully you can make the right choices.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And it's kind of an inspirational message in itself, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like the big theme with the comics is maybe is the inspiration of trying to overcome struggles in a way.
Well, all three of them have their own different struggles.
Yep.
That's true. You could even say traumatic in certain ways to each of them.
Right. And one of the things that we're having a lot of fun with is our role-playing Twitter accounts. And we've actually had a number of conversations along these lines between Maeve and Adobe, where Maeve expresses these doubts, and Adobe says, "Kid, your brain isn't even going to be mature for another 10 years. Give yourself some time to grow and enjoy being a kid."
Perfect advice.
And also I would say I've definitely made Maeve a lot more talkative on her Twitter than she probably would actually be in real life. Although that's honestly not uncommon with introverts and people with bad social skills. They tend to do better they tend to do better in places where they don't have to physically interact with people. Like,
and Matt, is there a message that you'd like to bring across to readers for your part of the Mythoverse?
Be good.
Be good to each other.
That's it.
But,
a simple but true message.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the ideas I've got for the message will be in future books, such as recovery from emotional damage, because Alfie is going to take some emotional damage in the future as well. Mm-hmm. And she's going to have there's not so much going to be a story arc of it going on as is that it'll happen sporadically throughout the series, because it doesn't all happen all at once during a convenient story arc. It'll just happen when it happens.
It'll get there naturally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, Yep. So make a lot of mistakes when it comes to our personal life. But again, that's life.
And there's one thing I can say for these three ladies is none of them are Mary Sue's.
Well, for one, I gave Maeve a crippling weakness to iron.
And Adobe, who desperately needs to be able to vocalize her intention to use her powers, is a terrible stutterer.
And Althea can use magic, but it's also in a world where if she uses magic, she might get caught by a group of holy knights.
Yeah, she has to do her job with her hands tied behind her back. I'm sure it's very frustrating for her.
Well, she's an intelligent woman, so she'll find a way.
Yeah, she can't go in and blast the monsters, but she can wear her clothes inside out to chase them away, or give them ribbons, or yeah, she understands how they think, and that's what's most intriguing. Is you learn a little bit about all these little idiosyncrasies that the characters that the mythological creatures exhibit. Like Spriggans don't like it when you wear your clothes inside out, or pixies like ribbons. Just bribe them and they go away.
Not ribbons, things.
Yeah, anything shiny. Yeah.
The little simplest things, right? But in a sense of that, what kind of advice would you guys have for newer comic creators, as far as with your experience with writing, or even with a little bit of experience with art, if you have any?
Well, I definitely would say that no matter if you're a writer, no matter how good your idea is, your book is going to live and die by its aesthetics. So make sure you know exactly how you want this book to look, and if not, you got to go. If not, go with what fits the book best. You can't just plug any artist into a book and expect it to work. Or like Lenore actually echoed that sentiment in one stream she had with me and Matt, where she said, like, if Changeling was done with a more realistic style, it'd be a much more depressing book. Like, this sort of the anime manga aesthetic actually gives it a little bit, makes it feel more carefree and lighthearted, and can also help offset some of the more darker moments that are going to happen in the book. And so do not shirk on your aesthetics, and do not be afraid to have to be picky, because you might just have to be to find the artist who fits you best. Also, be prepared to be in this for the long haul. If you really want to pursue this, you've got to have a way to pay your artists. So you better have some source of income. Like, my advice, like, you better have a day job, one that pays well, and one where you better have a living situation where your expenses aren't too high, so that you can afford it to get this out in a timely manner. And not only that, just you got to get out. You got to put yourself out there on social media. We found Twitter and Instagram the best fits. And just keep talking, keep networking with people, show it off. Don't be afraid to talk to people, because like a lot of people want to help. Because we all started out with basically with nothing too, and so most comic artists that we've networked with were in the same boat we were at one point, and they've been willing to help out because they've been there. And honestly, we've only gotten as far as we've had because of the support we've gotten from other creators and the friends we've made. And we owe a lot to those people.
And I'd have to say, don't be overly aggressive towards each other. Don't be angry. Don't be mean. You'll never know who you're talking to. You might talk to your future shared universe creator without even realizing it. So just don't keep people or their ideas. If it's anything, try to engage with them on a more professional level and see where that gets you.
Which is wise advice.
I guess from where I sit, in terms of writing, make them care about your characters, and they can't care about your characters if you don't care about your characters. Like, for example, I love the occasional genre-aware deconstruction, but as a steady diet, that's the quickest way to like kill any immersion into your story. So be sincere. Like, don't use words like this is cringy, but I want the character to say this. No, believe in what your characters are doing, treat them like real human beings, and that'll come off in your writing. In terms of the art, I have to echo what Brett says. Pick the right artist for the tone you're going for and the aesthetic you're going for. Like Adobe Kroger would not work with Victor's art as well as Changeling would work with Victor's art, because Changeling is totally appropriate for that style. The type of story I wanted to tell needed some stark, strong black and white lines, because I wanted to go for more of like a manga Sin City-esque type look. So Leandro is a perfect fit for that. And in terms of marketing, I'll echo what Matt said. Don't be a dick to people, and it's not like I'm not trying to be glib about it. It's like really just treat people the way you want to be treated. People that are hating on you probably are people that want to spend money on your book, but they just say, I would if this were a little bit better. So engage with them and get their feedback and take it to heart or not. But, there's no reason to be belligerent. There's no reason to go after people or harass them or dox them or swat them. I mean, come on. That's stupid. That's juvenile. That's dangerous. We're just here to make funny books. We're here to make people happy. We're not here to make people miserable. So just be a good person. Like Matt said, be good.
Hey, so Matt was on to something here.
Exactly.
So
I don't say things for no reason.
That's right. We're wrapping up here at the end. I just had one final question I wanted to pose to you guys, which is that is there anything that you'd like to say to all the Mythoverse fans out there?
I can't wait for you to read these books. You're going to love them. There's a genre for everybody. We have like young adult action. We have mystery. We have balls to the wall, high octane combat, top shelf artwork. Writers that love comics, have been reading them their whole life, and have a genuine love for the medium and for storytelling in general. This is not a cynical cash grab. This is us doing something that we really love. Our artistic teams are doing what they really love, and it shows every time Leandro turns in a page. He's so excited to get started on the next one, and it just shows. And I honestly think you're going to be getting that with all 3 of our books.
I've wanted to make a comic book ever since I was a teenager, and here I am in my late 20s, and I'm this close to actually making it real. And the way I see it, I've sunk too much time and money in this to back out now. It's not just for myself. It is for the fans and the people I've befriended. This maybe is a character that people like, and her story is one that I think people want to follow, and I've got people that are genuinely excited for it. So I've got every intention of seeing this through, and I mean, it's my hope that I don't expect everyone to pick up all 3 books. Just grab the one you like. If that's all, if you prefer Mythics or Adobe Kroger over Changeling, I'm glad I'm glad you do, because this isn't just about me. This is about us doing something that is very ambitious, that we are not seeing being attempted in our corner of the indie sphere. Here with just making an actual, honest to God shared universe, something that hasn't been done in a long time. Like, it's a wholly new thing, and I'm glad I've been blessed to be working with Dan and Matt. They've done so much for me, and just supporting one book means you're supporting the whole brand, to be honest, because you don't, and that's all I'm asking for at the end is just whichever book you pick, or if you pick all 3, I'm just glad you did.
That's excellent. Yeah,
absolutely.
I echo everything that he says.
Mm-hmm. Now, I love it. You guys have all the options for people to be able to pick up books individually, or to really dive into the Mythoverse and get them all and just start reading. And I think that's a really great way to do it.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a little something for everyone here, and that's what we're hoping to accomplish.
Yes, and fans of mythology have a lot to look forward to with all these great stories and just amazing characters and art and comics that are to look forward to. So everybody is going to be launching on April 25th on Kickstarter, so be on the lookout for that. There'll be more posts from you soon. And where can they follow you online so that they can make sure they follow all that updated information?
I'll go ahead and drop the Mythoverse Twitter in the chat. I already dropped our Instagram in the chat, and a number of YouTube links that have the trailers for Adobe Kroger and Changeling. The one for Mythics is still in the works, as well as some theme music that will be available for the campaign by ZVT Music. So those are all in the chat there. And you can follow me at Molly_Beans on Twitter.
I'm going to post these into the YouTube links so that you guys can get a hold of them. These are some just various links. Sorry, can you explain these for the watchers again?
Sure. Okay, the YouTube links, there are 2 trailers. One was produced for Adobe Kroger, voiced by Addison Peacock as Adobe Kroger, and she is the narrator for the Adobe Kroger audiobook. And basically it explains Adobe's backstory, her part of the universe, and how it fits into the Mythoverse. And the other link is the Maeve trailer for Changeling. And who was the voice actress for that again, Brett?
Kylie Ann. You can find her at Color Mix Studio. That's color with a K, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and she does the same thing. She talks about herself and her little corner of the Mythoverse. And the other 3 YouTube links are theme. Actually, I had trouble finding the Changeling one. Brett, if you want to drop that one in the chat so they can include it. There's theme music for Adobe Kroger, theme music for Mythics, and theme music for the Mythoverse as a whole. These were all done by an incredibly talented individual named Zalin Tallis, and he's at Comic Book Music on YouTube. You can find his channel by following the links from the videos.
The Changeling theme you're missing, Dan?
Yeah, the Changeling theme. I was having trouble locating
it. I'm getting it right now.
Now, awesome. Is there any plans to maybe do an Althea trailer at some point?
There is. It's scripted. We just had a little bit of issue with the audio, but as soon as that's fixed, that will be going up.
Nice. Yeah, I love those trailers. Those are so fun.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I think they were really well done. And it's cool to hear the characters and hear them talk about it. It adds something really, really cool to it, that I've not really seen before.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I think we have as a strength is that our characters will feel very alive, and we're doing a lot of work towards making them feel alive.
I found it.
You found it? Okay. Yeah, go ahead and drop that in the chat. I dropped our Mythoverse Twitter account in the chat too, and Brett just dropped the Changeling theme song in the chat.
And in the Mythoverse Twitter. And then should you like me to plug your Twitter as well, Dan?
Yeah, I will.
Sure. It's at Molly_Beans.
I will say in regards to the music, these all of these are going to be available as a free download when you back it. We will more than likely we'll put the individual themes with the individual rewards and all 4 with the bundles. That's nice. About right.
Yep, that's what we're planning to do.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then, so we know we can follow the Mythoverse at the Twitter there. And Brett, where can people follow you online?
You can follow me on Twitter at Brett1106. I'll put that link in right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I really go with aside from yesterday. I don't. Aside from yesterday, I don't really go a day without using Twitter. So I'm very active.
And then what about you, Matt? Where can people follow you online?
You can follow me on at Matt Trinh. Basically, my name just squished together. And I'm fairly active on Twitter, so you can definitely. My DMs are always open if you have questions about it, or if you've got ideas that I could pass on to the other 2 if they don't answer.
So between the 3 of you, they should be able to get through to you.
That's the hope.
Nice. Well, that's perfect. I think that's about wraps it up for our Wiki Creator Menu with the Mythoverse team. I just want to thank everyone in the chat for joining us and for having some fun with us while we chatted with the guys. And I want to thank you guys for joining us as well for giving us that great inside interview with all that really good information.
It was absolutely a pleasure, and thanks for having us as always.
You're welcome. And again, look out for the Kickstarter, Mythoverse Kickstarter, launching April 25th. 3 comics, 1 shared universe.
Can't wait for you guys to read it. It's gonna be awesome.
Can't wait for it to be fulfilled.
We also have an ad coming out in a later issue of Alternas. It came out on a Wednesday.
Yes, that's right. I believe it is issue number 6, if I'm not mistaken.
Did Peter give a window for when that issue is coming out?
You can expect that coming out probably towards the end of April, possibly early first week of May, depending, but probably most likely towards the end of April. So look for
Perfect
that in
timing.
your local comic shops. Yep. And yeah, that's gonna be exciting to see. I'm looking forward to that.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. And this has been a Wiki Creator interview. Guys, we'll see you next time for the podcast and for all our other fun events. And thanks again for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.
Yeah.
Later, guys.
Later.
Bye.